Oh, broadcasted live. All right. And no live event. I can link to that. Well, let's just minimize that. Cameras on. Oh well. So let's start recording this. So it matters. Okay, record. Installing camera. Okay. 7. All right. So now we're recording, and let's get back to good stuff. Okay, that's my security token. We don't need that anymore. Let's go to a clip. Okay, now get tutorial. Here's the page we made, right? Now, really, all that's going to be out is going to be a little bit less Git stuff. So, I guess, can I get some audience questions? Like, what are your current pain points with version control in your Salesforce orgs? Anybody just getting this set up in general, right?
Yeah, I think there's one of the elements version control strategy. It's typically not a repository.
Right.
Either everyone's going to commit to that, or like I think source of truth because Salesforce is running with that. Salesforce is responsible.
Exactly.
But the repo is usually there for exposing to other people and just kind of
diffing,
tracking, and seeing what happened when.
Right.
And in the worst case, trying to recover something.
Exactly. Rollback, right? Like release night went bad. I don't want to necessarily roll back everything because we pushed 5 things. And it's only one that's probably going to be that bug, right?
And then the tricky part is release night pushed prod. There's some things that can't necessarily be rolled back. Manual aspects of
enabling publisher action, right? Some things have to be manually done and captured outside the code.
So, this is why it's tricky. So we're trying to figure out what's the right design pattern that team development is
right. Let's go. So let's start with that. Okay, so we've got some links here. That's the first thing. You know what? Let's put a resources tab on this. We're going to have a resources tab where we have links, right? But before we get to that, I'd like to use some of this. So let's, how are we going to best, so we're not going to have necessarily an enterprise version of this. It's going to be a little tough because what you might have in an enterprise version is everybody's going to have the same org. Everybody might have their own sandbox, but once you get to a certain point, at least in my organization, maybe everybody has their own personal sandbox. I think I'm going to do this on what, Visio or something. I don't know. Let's open up Visio. And let's see. So let's say I'm gonna put some swim lanes on. So okay, cross-functional swim lane. Let's say you've got this is like Salesforce instances. You've got your production. You've got full copy. Let's say full copy, gene review, whatever you might call that. QA. It should be an exact copy of production at almost all times, except when brand new things going into production are getting QA'd, right, and making sure that they can integrate. And then let's say below that, you just have dev sandboxes, personal sandboxes, right? So what will happen is, at this point, different people. I mean, yeah, I have a login for your sandbox, but I'm not going to go in there, right? Usually, I develop in my sandbox, and then once it gets to this communal sandbox, we all have logins to that instance. So there's going to be some things that are different. Here. And that's one of the first steps is, okay, so now the code's going to be the same, but I'm checking it out, not him or not her. So that I don't want that file, right? Like I don't want it to store their username. It's not going to store their password in there, right? That's going to be encrypted somewhere. It's not going to transfer over. But so then I got to go in and change that, right? That is stored, I think, in the file. So let's actually go in here, right? It's up one level. So let's type out the .project file. You can see, right, no username in there. It's actually in the settings. What I usually do is go to this settings. That's where all that stuff is, right? Let's keep that there.
I think if they keep the username and password outside the settings.
So I'm still going to have to go in and change that. Right, and this is kind of like, I don't want a certain package. I want to package that also, right? So that's where all that is stored. Usually some of that's specific to the organization, but I like to just leave that all. I can add this to the ignore file. Right? So let's maybe do some of that. I'm going to open up this tutorial page. Let's close that. And I'm going to open up a new file. And we're going to add pm.com downloads, right? Yada, yada, yada. Let's just save that now. The link. And we're going to save that here. Resources.text. Okay. Right, we can just leave that. I'm going to delete this on the whiteboard. I'm going to put all these links on the So since we don't have one organization with enough Salesforce licenses, because the developer org only has 2, it would be like, okay, so Octocat for us, let's say I would have one and then everybody else would be sharing one, right? But then that's fine because you're all going to have the same username and it's going to be the same password. So does everybody have a developer org they can pull some code into? And if you need to, like, spin up a blank dev org, I'm going to put Octocat for us on GitHub and actually populate that empty one. So we're going to start going over some of that, right? So now you're going to be developers in an enterprise where there's more than one developer. So we're going to try to simulate that. Not everything's going to be the same, but if you're using GitHub private, it should be pretty similar. The only thing we're not going to be able to see is kind of that production sandbox thing, because dev orgs don't have sandboxes that are linked to them, right? So I'm going to do that. And because you never really use this at one time, that's probably going to have a little more. All right. So you only do this once, because then once it's shared, you don't re-share it, right? I'm going to clone it and make changes, then push it there. And if it's something where people don't have push privileges, you're going to submit a pull request in GitHub, and that means, oh, you made a change. I'm going to bring in that change, right? So what I'm going to do first is go to GitHub. I'm going to go to our GitForce meetup, and this has no code in it right now, right? So what I'm going to do is, let's go to the Git. I can do this from the command line, but right, if you know how to do it from the command line, you don't need me to tell you to do it. So I can either just go on the command line to repos, git make a folder, connected things like a folder is a repo. That .git folder inside of it is actually what's managing it, but all the code in that folder being tracked is what gets stored in the repo. So I could do this clone, and it's going to make a which is not the name as AutoCAD for it. And another important thing is, A, you can't have more than one directory name the same thing, period, right? But also, in Eclipse, you can't have a project named the same thing in the same workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and clone this. Let's copy the clone URL to my clipboard. And then inside of the Git repository exploring view, we can do it this way. So really, this will kind of become obsolete because I don't want to track it separately. It is the same code base, so I don't want like my local repo and then my GitHub repo with my local copy. That's the whole point of that. I have a local copy. It's everything there, but then I can push it to the server, right? And if somebody else has made 2 commits, I'll have to resolve that if there's conflicts. So this will become not important. I could delete this. I'm just not going to take the time right now. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to clone a Git repository that's somewhere else and put it here and then add it to this view. Add it to the Git view. Clone URI. So we're going to give it the location. Since I had something in the clipboard, it's like Bitly. It knew that. It put it there, right? So right there, that's where I'm getting it. And it parses all that out, right? It puts the host because it got it from the URI. It takes the repository path, that's everything else. It knows what the protocol is, there's no port needed. And then authentication, let's just say there's no authentication needed. I think it's going to prompt us if it needs it, right? If there was more than one branch, this is how you pull only a couple branches out, right? But because we're not doing that, you won't need to worry about that. But if you had multiple branches, this is where you could not pull down everything. I'm not sure about all the details on that, but we're not going to get into that. I want to store it in not that folder. I want to store it in, my thing is in my documents, force.com, repo. So we're going to put it here. Repos, Force Meetup, initial branch is master, the remote name is origin. Unless you have a big reason to change these things, don't change them, then your forums won't help you, and you got to know so much more, right? So we'll call the remote server the origin. That's where we're cloning from, and that's all. Perfect. Let's switch to our force.com view. It's in there. We don't have a project to import yet, right, because it's blank. So what's the cleanest way to do this? I'm not sure. I just copy files in, right? So what I'm going to do now is got this AutoCAD Force repo, which is where the code's being stored. It's not being stored in my workspace, right? Like normally happens, because I just want to keep it separate. That way your workspace is light, and I can take things in and out. I'm never going to delete the contents off my disk, though, right? It's still local, right? Now, I want to take that code, not the Git folder. I'm going to take these things because I want to show you how to ignore it. So let's do that here. I'm going to take everything here, copy, right, and then have the readme that I want to include, and then paste. Now I've got everything that was in my local repo. Now it's in the local that I cloned, so it has an origin. Right? I mean, your origin is technically your C drive. When you create it, there is no origin. I mean, maybe there is, but there's nothing off of this computer. Now, let's go into here. We're going to go into that repo that's posted on GitHub now, and we'll do a git status after I copy all that. It doesn't show every file, right? But when I add them, it's going to show every subfile. So notice that we're including .settings and Salesforce schema. I don't want to include Salesforce.schema. There's just no point, right? It's like you click it, and then it's kind of like a UI thing. It's, you know, it's meant to explore through Eclipse. So let's create a git ignore. So I'm going to use vim, vim.gitignore. So we're going to, right, it's kind of like a bash script. Sign or number sign means the rest of the line's commented. I don't think there's any block comments, are there? I don't think there's any block commenting. So they ignore force.com IDE. And then we can give it a pattern. I know exactly what I'm ignoring, so I'm going to ignore the files Salesforce.schema and the .settings directory. That's how you signify that, right? You got to put the forward slash to signify it's a directory. Let's leave that off. I'm going to save this. Now I have the ignore file, right? And it was just created a minute ago, or this minute. And now I'm going to do a get status. Notice how the Salesforce schema is, oh good, and the dot settings isn't there. So perfect. Those files are on my computer, but it's not tracking, right? So now if I add everything, it won't add those. And then the project file, let's leave that for now. I'd like you guys to see what happens when you clone it and you try to import the project in Eclipse. You'll have to go into the project settings and change your username, right? And that's the thing, is you'll be hooking up to a completely different org because you're not going to be using this dev org. That's mainly a dev org issue. So I do want to add the get ignore file, right? You never want to ignore the get ignore because it needs to be carried over. Get add. I'm just going to do period because nothing's been deleted, so we don't need to worry about that. Commit. And this is going to be initial commit. Okay. Now, refresh. Refresh. Nothing's here yet. I updated my computer. This is where we get into some of the server stuff. So now I want to push that thing. Now is what I would need to clone this, because now you're actually going to be able to clone it into somewhere, and I want you to load it up into the dev org. So let's do this. Status, no changes. Your brand master is ahead of origin/master by one commit. It tells you, right? Let's also see this in the UI. Let's go to repository. Remember we went to get staging? There's nothing staged, right? But, and you know what? I'm actually going to delete this repository and the project that, right, this old one is not connected to anything, and that's okay. It's not going to delete the Salesforce data, right? It's just going to delete what's on my computer. Let's delete the repository, delete the repository, remove the project, and then, yeah, octocat force, also delete working directory. Perfect. That disappears. Oh, I haven't imported the project yet. That's fine. So, right, all that's gone. And then also on the command line, if I go up, I've only got one directory now. Perfect. Okay. So now I actually want to commit this, right? Or I'm sorry, I want to push it to GitHub so that that shows. It. Again, if we type status, it's going to tell us to push to bring it up to speed. Push. Username. All right. It was a good day. Okay, now. Cool, right? Hold on a second. Into here. So, did we use anything new except push? I don't think so. Right, I just get status, get a push. You can do that. I think there's a command line you can do it with commit, so you can commit and push, and there's also something through Eclipse you can commit and push. Although, I mean, really, the only reason you don't want to push immediately is is if you've got that, oh, sales manager Susie made a report, and I don't want to deal with that right now, right? But I'd like to commit it and label it and put it up there. Because otherwise, I would get your things pushed so that if anybody else is pushing, it's just less of a conflict, right?
When you think about push, are you overriding someone else's changes?
We're going to, it's smart enough to know.
Okay.
That's a good thing. It's smart enough to know if there's any destructive changes. If you really want to get into it, you can change configuration things where the default is simple, or it's smart enough to know, right? Unless you're smart enough to override the settings, it's smart enough to know.
Is a git push a guarantee that if it comes to that branch from branch master or whatever, or if someone who's administering the repo has a chance to accept changes that we push?
It depends on if you have push rights. What is that? If you have commit access. Unless I add your, so this is hosted on GitHub, right? So unless I add you as contributors, I would go through here. So who has a GitHub account? This GitHub account. Perfect. Okay, so overhead. Okay. Do you have a GitHub account yet? No. Sign up for one. Awesome. And so let's do this. Everybody that has a GitHub account, I'm not sure if you need a GitHub account to clone it. Maybe you could check that before you sign up. Yeah. So that's the thing. To clone, you don't need to sign up if it's public record, which is free. So, but if you want to push, you're going to need to sign in. And if you sign in with your GitHub username and you don't have contributor access, you just won't. Right? Sorry, you don't have access. That's where pull requests come in, and that's the whole thing. Git was written by Linus Torvalds to manage contributions to the Linux kernel. There's a lot of people out there. It's a lot of code, and so it's a distributed system. It's different than Subversion. It's different than a lot. I mean, everything before Git and Mercurial. I think Git might have been the first distributed version control system. I don't quote me on that. I'll do that later. But one of the main things that you run into a problem with is trust. Right. And so that's, I mean, you need a subjective human doing a lot of this stuff. It's just the tools make it easier. It's like a console. It's not an automated thing all the time, but it's a good, tools that you need to do your job effectively, right? So for anybody that can, go here. That's also going to be a one person can't make it. And what I would like you to do is put this code into your organization. So unlike maybe sandboxes in enterprise where every developer has access to the same org, you're going to be putting it in a different org. So for this example, what I would suggest is maybe spinning up a whole new dev org. I'm going to do that just for the sake of this. I'm going to go, let's open up a new here. Let's open up developerboards.com. I'm going to sign into a smaller email. And let's join now. I'm going to get a free developer org. And so if you can use one that you've already had, but it might be, I'm going to go over completely replacing the contents. So you can just selectively, like copy in that one page, right? If you want to bring that in. And we're going to make username be GitHub. What is this? Salesforce meetup. Let's do this npepper at Salesforce meetup. Dev. Master of making email address username. Okay, I just hope I don't forget that. Safe Harbor. I've heard that people at Salesforce would like there to be a tool where you could enter your email address and find out what organization you're responsible for, which for me is approaching triple digits. So that would be a useful tool because I can't afford, well, I don't even know how much LastPass is, but I'm sure that would help. Yeah, the free version's pretty. LastPass. Oh, what? Because things like Dashlane only keep one username per account, right? I do.
You know, I don't even have to do a message pass to it. LastPass, reach out.
Wow.
LastPass is awesome.
I spend half my life signing in, especially with my phone, right? It's like, oh, wait, underscore. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So here we go. Let's see. What is your next name? Right. Okay, I'm going to dismiss that. Of course. And now, what I'd like to do is go to myforce.com. So you already have a developer org, right? Here's what you're going to do. Oh, I'm going to import that project into here. So it's also a project. Because in my force.com perspective, I have no project yet because it was blank when I cloned it, right? So now that I've copied those files over, I got rid of the non-server linked one, I'm going to actually import this project. So this will be easy because it was my username and password, right? Let's go ahead and import. Import existing project, sure. So you'll notice that. Why is it calling it that force? And how can we change that? Where would we start looking? Or I guess here's a question. What do I need if I'm importing projects? It looks for a certain file, and it begins with dot. Oh! For a workbook of your choice. Right? I'm just waiting for the end. Workbook of your choice. Where's the project name for Eclipse project? Okay. I heard you first. So, you can come up here, change this name, AutoCAD Force, and I'm going to cancel out of this. Actually, yeah. How can I refresh? Let's cancel out of this. That's fine. And you know what? No.
What did you want to get force me on?
People that don't like them, like it has Man mode. You know what? It's also because if you're in caps lock mode.
Okay, I did.
Boom. Okay. When we, so this repo has always been named when we import. Let's take a. Okay, so let's go ahead and import that, because then what we want to really do is, it gives me an error message, I don't know. You know, sometimes, we can close the clips, I was able to see what, when I did my git repo to track what the workspace changes were, I was able to see what that changed in the file, right? So those are some things, once I started using Git more, there are things you can find out with Git about your computer, right? Like where does that change get marked? So if you're ever curious about kind of, where does it know how to not ask me? Because when you start a new workspace, it keeps asking you until you do that again, right? So let's close that.
So if my headset, I got to the point where it's the software part, moved to the computer, and it's not going to be a later on. I want to.
Oh. I'm going to push that change right now because the .project file is something that was there. Watch, let's do that. Let's status. Modify the .project. Those the .swap and the. I'm going to close this. Notice how we had a .swap file, and now we don't. It will also, every time you edit it, it will add the same file name with a tilde at the end because that's your most recent version. That's just a VI, a Vim thing. So what I normally do, which I will do to the .getignore, I'd rather not have the files there. So I normally do like a delete star tilde to get rid of all those. But what we're going to do is modify this to also ignore Vim files. So star swap, and then star tilde. So I ignore those. Now watch this. Not only can we do that, I modified the .getignore. I do want to update that, but then boom, the project. So just redo that in 1 second. And we don't have anything in the staging area yet, right? I have to do a -A if I want to commit all changes that are pending. But there's this staging area, so I'm going to use that. Git add project. Commit. Change project name from GoCatForce to GitForce Meetup. Okay, done. Okay. Now I also want to do this. A different commit, right? I didn't need to push that right now, but I wanted to. So now Laura can go, and you'll be fine. The getignore is going to be different, but you can pull it down. Maybe you can learn how to, like, oh, that's something that changed there, and then I have something different that's old that I want to push. It'll either just automatically resolve, or you can fetch, which we'll go over soon. So now I want to add everything because it's one file, and then commit files to ignore, right? The big part of the staging area. When we get to profiles and objects, you'll find out how you can add certain lines to a commit. That's still a pain. I would rather click once, commit everything, and then click again than go through every line in a profile. You don't go through every line, you go through every change line. So we'll see some of that. I think we're going to add a couple profiles to the VisualForce page access, and I'll show you, maybe we'll add a field, like a benign field, because that will change every profile for for a little bit, and we're going to select the snippet of the VisualForce page to commit separate of this. So now we're synced. You can download it. It's going to be a new project name that matches the GitHub project name. It's just nicer, right, when things sync up. And now, we've actually got code here. You see there were 2 commits. Now there's 3 commits. Initial commit was blank with the README. The second commit was all of our code, and this third commit, we changed the project name. I didn't push the git ignore yet. Long username. There's 4 commits, right? And that's what you want, is you don't want to clutter up your commits as much. It's okay to have a big commit history because you want like traceable, blamable, or praisable things, right? Has anybody got this code into their own dev org yet? Got it? So I'm going to do that right now. So I've closed down the, let's open it. And we imported it with the same name as GitHub. So that's all set. Now what I'm going to do, instead of just continue making changes, that let's say I'm someone else. I'm going to come here. I do private, right? It's like all of your non-private session browsing things have one, and then all of your private browsing have another session. This is just to manage the login and test endpoints, right? You can only have one session ID per Salesforce URL, per browser, private, non-private. That's why I download 4 browsers. Let's see. Now I'm in my brand new dev org. Is it mpepper at gitforce? Yes, I should github.dev. So I want to bring in everything from this. So I'm going to go to force.com first, right? Because this isn't a Git repository. I've already got the Git repository cloned. So now what I want to do is I want to bring my Salesforce org down so that I have it here. So let's open a new force up. And that's what will happen is if you're cloning something, you won't be able to access their Salesforce org. You can access their code, which is not their Salesforce org, right? So we're going to bring down our Salesforce org, which that's different in an enterprise. You bring down the sandbox. Well, hopefully you don't bring down the sandbox or production, but when that happens, you can roll back, which will go right. But you're in the same organization with a different username, right? But it is the same org that developer 2 is in. So what we're going to do is this is project name or contributor force. Yeah, it's long. Orgs, meetup, contributor. Do that. Because I make new dev orgs every day, I already forgot what my username was. Okay. Excellent. So username, password. We're going to do this because I don't want a security token right now. That's okay. And I'm going to have to go into here and architect this and add this IP as safe. And then I can just go, this is a developer edition, max out our timeout, pull down everything. Pull down nothing, too. Let's do that. None. This is a great way to not have a lot of overhead, but you get the .project file, you get an empty package XML file, you kind of get everything you need to put code in without having to deal with moving the other stuff. Let's do none, finish. And this can be a good way to kind of, like if you're in an enterprise organization setup, even if you're in a sandbox, it can be a nice way to just say, let's log me in. That checks your credentials. I wasn't going to be able to do that with nothing if I wasn't able to log in, even, right? Because it does make sure I can log in. So now I know I'm logged in. I have nothing except a completely, I didn't want to put a character in there, completely empty package.xml file, but not. There's something in there, right? Okay. I put an extra space. So I'm going to now copy all the code in. Do this with Windows Explorer, do it through the command line, whatever, right? I'm going to go in here. This is the course meetup, and that's in my repos area. Notice how, right, this works. That's where I brought in the organization right now. Notice how AutoCAD Force is still there because it's in delete. I'm going to get rid of that now. So, Git force, yada yada, right? Go to repos, meetup. I'm not going to keep that in the repos area, even though I'm going to track it there, just because I don't want to move it around, right? But it would be nice if you did the same thing where it's going to be a repo and track, you can put it in a different place. It's just going to track that in the metadata for the workspace, and it's going to know to look somewhere else for the code. It's kind of a separation of concerns on a Eclipse level, right? Here's where my workspace is. I don't necessarily want to keep my code there because I kind of want my code in a different place. I know that's tracked by Git, and it's kind of, it separates it a little more. Let's, we're in this workspace. Let's copy the code from the repo. And I'm just going to copy everything except the dot table. What was it? The URL, like to push? So I'm going to copy everything except Git folder, which is the repo. And I'm going to go over here. I just copied it, go into the workspace. Let's go to my contributor account. I'm going to delete everything that's already in here. Just making sure I can do that. Okay, for sure. Let's see what messes up. Okay, completely replaced it. This wasn't its version control yet. So let's go in here. We're in the force.com perspective. We want to make sure, so let's refresh. That's refreshing with local. I just changed local. I'm going to push F5, or you can right-click this, right, and refresh. Now it's in there. So now what I want to do is I've cloned the repository out, and I kind of replaced my empty dev org or my stock dev org with the code that I cloned out. So I should be able to see in here a whole bunch of errors, right, which are going to be unable to perform a save. Let's delete that. Okay. What I want to do is go in here and make sure there's some classes that deal with GitHub and OctoForce, yeah. And there's that page in here, Git tutorial. That's the one we're going to concern ourselves with. So now, let's go into here, and I want to make sure that, I guess I should use this more. So let's go into pages. No pages, right? Now, if I deploy this, is this where you had trouble when you tried to deploy it?
No, I just wouldn't let me, like, I'm importing it and whatnot.
Weird.
Yeah, it's probably something I
can. We'll do some troubleshooting on that. So let's deploy a server. Ah, that's the project file. So watch this. Continue. I need to fill that in, right? Actually, let me close out of this. Let's see what happened here. Project properties. That's the Salesforce org I can't log into because I don't have access to that Salesforce org. I have access to the code, right? And this is with like managed packages or stuff that's on GitHub that you don't have access to, you know, Salesforce Labs or or VisualForce does code in Salesforce, you have access to the copies, right? So that's what's made public with that .project file. So I can hide that .project file, which we maybe should do, right? Because now I got to go in here and I got to change this. This is, you know, my personal dev org. I really forgot that. What was it? Users. Oh, it didn't say my username. Usually that's a setup object that gets tracked in the history. There we go. And let's do that. Don't need a security token because I whitelisted that my own tech there, right? And that's it. Yes. So now we won't see that complaining at us. Now let's deploy. Trip.com, deploy a server. Deploy the future, right? Just from my C drive to there. Check. Okay. And now I want that username, password. Whoa. Don't need security token. Let's go next. I'm not going to make any backup, right? Next. Yeah, let's just select all and go. Always nice to completely replace the code base of an organization. And we'll work on that. So we didn't need to take everything in, right? I mean, you can selectively do that. And that's what happens when you roll back. You can completely go back to an old commit, but only one thing broke. So oftentimes that it'll be a manual fix, right? It's easier to go in and maybe find one thing and fix it, and then push that one fix rather than maybe use it to roll back. But excellent. See, and that's the problem here. None of this stuff matters, right? And so they were probably going to, right? Instead of deal with this, right? The problem is I'm in a different org. We have even if it was an ID, we have things pointing at stuff that doesn't exist in this org, right? So let's just pull in what matters. Let's do this. I am in the contributor. Do this. I can selectively deploy. Yeah, selectively deploy. Well, everything. I can selectively deploy, and then I can pull down everything from my org. I'm just going to have everything. We got those pages. All that. That's like something that I use to kind of do that GitHub API stuff. Let's just remove it. Clone and deploy. Boom. Pages, one page, right? Let's deploy this to my org. And that's it. Password, next. Add page, next. It was successful, and it was so fast. And now I can come in here, add, remove components. I'm using keyboard shortcut. Sorry. People watching. And I can still pull in everything if I want to. I'm thinking maybe let's just stick with this for now. Right, but I can like select all. Yeah, why not? Just a little. Let's pull in everything. Okay. Select it. Yes. That's going to get everything. It's basically getting that one page. Anybody have this pulled up so far on their own developer org? No? So I've done that. Now what I want to do is add some things and get a pull request, right? I want that to show up on the GitHub account, but technically I don't have access as this other person, right? I mean, yeah, I can enter my credentials, but this person doesn't have access. They're going to come in here, let's just be in this for a while, and say, oh, okay, so getting started. I'm going to add a tab for resources, right? So let's go ahead. I always like to do VisualForce in the browser, intelligence there. I always like to do Apex classes here. I'm trying to use the workbench more. Let's do resources, name resources, E equals resources. Title equals and links. I didn't know that. There we go. Oh, there we go. That's new. I didn't see that before. You push a open. Oh man, it's the first time I've seen that. Is that new? Is that new to Force Software ID or no? API, maybe no. Saved locally. It's not going to show up in my Salesforce org as a contributor. Not going to show up in the GitHub account, right? So now we look in our. Oh, and this isn't. Is this being tracked in the repository yet? No. How do I clone that? So hold on, I made a change. Now I want to push this. Oh, hold on, let's see. I'm trying to do people from the same computer. So what happened is I did I clone this? I did clone it and imported projects, right? But then I kind of copied all my files into the contributor project. So this isn't synced with. See how there's the yellow cylinder? See how there's like a yellow cylinder next to the VisualForce meetup, but not next to the VisualForce contributor? Like the VisualForce contributor doesn't have a database yellow. Yeah, so that's not even tracked. Oh, yeah, and the problem is we have the Force meetup folder, right? Here we go. Oh man, that's tough. But not in here. I've only got one repo in my repos directory. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into this contributor directory, git clone that. Sorry about the confusion, guys. I was hoping clone this. So okay, let me actually clone this. It will be tracked from the beginning once I clone it. I'm going to clone it in directory, right? It's the same name. It's going to get the name from there. Now I've got a folder for Git Force Meetup, which is that repo I just cloned. Go ahead and swap out. So I've got this Force Meetup. And let's go into the .project file. I want to share the .project file outside of an enterprise solution, and it's still going to hold your username. So it's probably going to be, it may or may not be less work to go in and change that username. They're not going to have the password, right? But I probably want to ignore the .project file. So I can go in here. Import that and worry about it later. So what I'm going to do now is inside of contributors, contributor, make a workspace. because I want it to be a different workspace. I can't have a project name the same thing, right? I'm being two people at this point. So this is my contributor, right? So I've got the Git repo, Git Force Meetup saved in this folder. I'm also going to make a workspace because this is my non-publisher project, right? So if I go into that workspace now, and let's go to my document, force.com, contributor workspace. So now we're going to add an existing local Git repo and import the project. And if there's something wrong with the project file, we'll just fix it. What's something that's coming out maybe in spring 14? Something Apexy. How many? So they recently added some database methods. Database.get updated and database.get deleted, so that you can get updated and deleted records within a certain span of time. Does anybody know what that span of time is? Open book. Is that what it's working?
It's only 15 days for that. Well, the second one's 15 days, but the amount of storage work is basically what.
I thought it was longer. Wow.
It used to be.
Yeah.
And they keep transferring, keep recycling.
Yeah.
It was originally 90 days, and then went down to 25, and then 30, and now 15. What's weird is if you do an Apex call to the software query, you do all rows. The nature has, not one Salesforce, it's spread out across other ones. You can find records that have been deleted and are not in the site.
Here we go. I'm going to spoil it for you.
So this is
Right.
yeah, I don't know when they go away, but I've done it before where I do it. We're going to say all rows. Then I'm looking like this isn't even in the cycle bin. How it's still here? I've entered the cycle bin, but it still comes back.
Approval processes too. There is a system level purge of deleted records. So there's a soft delete which marks the is deleted checkbox, which does a whole bunch of hiding on the UI level. And then there's the you can query all, or what's the sock? All rows.
All rows, yeah.
All rows if you're doing SOCL, because there's no query all Apex. It's the API outside. You can do all rows, and you can actually find deleted records. But then when you remove them from the recycle bin, there's still a system level dump. So if you want to delete an approval process, all records on an object must be deleted, hard deleted, but then also purged from Salesforce's end before you can delete what the approval process or the, yeah. If you've ever been in the sandbox making a mistake, right? It's like flows. It's like, no, stop. Stop the versions. So it's 15 days. Let's get deleted. There we go. See, 30 days. That. How about firsthand? How many script stages are you going to do? Good job. That winter 14? Here's what, yeah, just replace. You know what? That's something that they talk about in here, because that brings in new problems. But if you're somebody trying to maybe go through the XML reader and actually get C data, that can be good because those don't take a long time. A whole bunch of map stuff that takes a long time, yeah, it may be tougher because that could have been one script statement, but it was a JSON to serialize into a multi-level object array or something. Long time for a fast computer. So it's something that's lazy. So now we've got a new workspace. I'm trying to do 2 people. So this is the contributor. I've already got a repo locally. This doesn't have any workspace info. So I'm going to open up force.com. I'm going to open up Git repository exploring. Let's close that. Then let's close that. We're going to add an existing local Git repo to this view. Yes. No. Here, let's go. My documents, force.com, Git contributor, Git repos, Git force meetup. Yeah, that's the problem. That, wait a minute. That's the one that I, as the creator of that repo, made. I'm going to delete, not the repository, but this little, shoot. How do I remove that from here? Oh no, I've got an idea. I delete the workspace. You want to add the clone that I did, which is in a different folder. So we want to render workspace. Okay. Try that again. I want to get it out of contributor. I think I cloned it right in there as Git. Contributor workspace. And then I want to import that clone directory, which is under contributor Git force meetup. This is all going to be easier when you have less stuff on one computer. It does have other problems, like locked files. That's the one nice thing is there's no locked files. I was in TFS trying to do this, or even Subversion, and it's like, great, your .project file's locked, or something. I was like, the package XML file is locked, and you can't pull down a project. So let's open up the Git repository exploring and import a local. We've already cloned it. We can do this now from GitHub, but since I already did that, let's go and the Git contributor force meetup. And import the projects. Now I'm going to have to use this project info, but find force meetup, and it's here now. And let's look at the properties. Username. Oops. And my username was no security token needed because I whitelisted the dev org as new. 100 seconds or more. And okay. I hope I just screwed the page by replacing what I thought. I still have this page. Good. And you know what? That's all I need. So perfect. And now it's on version control. Also got everything. I didn't just get that one page. That's fine. I'm logged into my personal dev org with the code that I got. Right. And it's a lot of work, but once you get that synced up, it's a lot less work to now make changes, commit, add different changes, and push. Let's do this. Let's go to Git tutorial. I'm only going to add an extra tab, and we're going to commit and push that, because then I'd like to maybe talk about CI for like 15 minutes, and about like, okay, what does CI mean? What are some bullet points on that? But this page I'm going to continue to contribute to, and you guys can as well. we're going to get to a point where we do a pull request, so I can show you how that works. Yeah. Oh, nice. Is there an add-on or something that's native? Oh, perfect. So let's do this. Label equals sources, and links. Name equals resources. ID equals tab resources. Block title equals resource. Wait. The long one. This is the short one. Okay. Resources and links. Oh, I love it. Okay, save. Locally. Didn't deploy. Found. Some that you can ignore, right? I didn't try to save yet. What I want to do is, it's a good idea to maybe right-click. You don't need to deploy, but especially if it's a single file, I would go server, right? That's wait, we've gotten errors all day, but it's just working. This is my contributor page. Before I, got that there. We do have that page. We don't have the OctoCat force page though. But I didn't right-click and say save to server yet for all that stuff, right? So that's here. Let's go into here. At the resources tab. Oh, today is giving me errors even when it works. We've seen it with the repo, If you want to go and you can find it in your .metadata folder. There'll be a log, like a .log file. You can tail that if you're interested. That's where the flexi page. There's a whole bunch more maybe erroring out than the flexi page, then you'll be able to see that. So if I want to deploy everything I could, but I don't want to. It's in Salesforce. I'd like to commit it now. Let's go to the repository exploring. And go to Git staging. I just want to commit the tutorial page. And what did I do? Added resources. Commit and push. I see that. Now, I don't know if that means we actually weren't able to do that. Let's go and double check. Let's go into our repo, my contributor one. Yes, I did commit it. It just didn't push it because I don't have permission to push there, right? So now what do? Would I have had to fork this? Yeah. No, I don't have a. I didn't fork the repo, right? Shoot. So if I had forked the repo, where you actually do a pull request. So let's go to pull requests, right? New pull request. Compare branches to draft a pull request. You're really supposed to do a branch and then do it that way. In the same repository, works. So I would have to fork that. Shoot. It's the first time I did that actually. So if you're cloning it, that means that you can have contributor access, right? Who's got a GitHub account? Would you mind? I'm trying to think. Let me add you as a contributor, and then I'm going to do something real quick. Let's can only cover so much, right? It's 6:42, so I was planning on wrapping this up around 7. We can always have a version 2. But let's do this. I'm going to go to my VisualForce meetup, settings, collaborators. My password. Okay, collaborators. Can add a collaborator. I must select a team. What, new team? Here, teams. Team owners. Let's do LAForce.com. Doug. Okay. Access. Everybody's able to view and clone repositories if it's public, but this is the way that if you had a private, like let's say you have GitHub private or if you got a hosted GitHub account, this is how you'd give read and or write access or admin access to other members of your team. And they can use their personal GitHub account to manage that enterprise level permission still, which is nice because you don't have to make like a, my normal GitHub name dash my current company, right, or something like that. So I'm going to give you write access because in order to do a pull request, we would have had to do a fork. So I apologize for that. Let's create theme, write access, and I'm going to go to that team. I'm a part of it. I'm going to add member. Sure. NOW? Nice. Oh, but what's your GitHub username? Sure. Go for it. But at an enterprise level, you're not going to get much. You're the developer. So perfect. Now, and actually, if you come back up here, it's not going to be from your computer, but we're going to imagine that this was you, right? So now, we're going to come back here, and edits. Now we've still got that package XML change. I wanted to. And we are ahead of origin master by 1 commit. Right? So I'm going to go. And then he's going to have access.
Enable to access. Denied access.
Right access. Yeah, let's refresh. Okay, you're there. LAForce.com, Doug. Oh, I just created a team. I didn't link it with the repo. Oh, the report type's not deployed. Okay. All right, let's go back here. Let's go to my repository. Now I want to go to the settings for my repository. I wasn't able to add a single user. It was a team, right? Collaborators. Choose a team. LAForce.com, Doug. Add. That team can have only read access, or they can have admin access, which means they can commit, push, write, as well as add other teams and do all the administrative stuff, right? No. Okay. And then was not a pull request, right? That's somebody who has access, that's got trusted access, that can just commit. What might happen is you would have not just, if you have a large organization, hopefully not just one person is doing all of this, right? Maybe you have 2 or 3 or 5 people that can commit, and so that any one of those, if you get a pull request, they could take care of that, right? Instead of just waiting for that one person to call.
They want to change that stuff. I can't picture how it's actually functions outside the environment. And that's still the
Would you like to have a conflict outside? That's what I mean. That's what you're talking about, right? That was fine. He just added.
So, are we going with one single form that everybody's running within? And they have these local, you've got your local repo, which is full, or a clone, sorry, a central repo. And that's not merging. There's no, I'm not saying merging to go live with something, because the Salesforce instance is always the instance that has everything in that moment.
So
I can't have a change in my version of Salesforce and your version of Salesforce. We're on the same version.
yeah. Here's something I do. Every morning when I get in, I refresh. I delete everything and I refresh so that I know that I've got on my local drive the current state of the developer sandbox or whatever. And then I can get status. And if it's clean, I'm good.
Now that, this is,
You can automate that, right? Like you can write something that every day it will do X things, right? Pull all metadata, maybe make a branch with that, if it is different, make a branch with all that code so that when you come in, you can say, oh, look, there's a branch, and it's named updates 2014-0131, right? And in that way, you can merge that when you come in. You wouldn't maybe want to automate that because you want to comment things that are unique.
now we make sure that in your scenario, you're deleting all the files
From Salesforce, yeah. Because I can always say, whoa, 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 stop. I haven't committed yet, so let me just like reset. That's another one.
And even if you had, actually, wouldn't you commit before you pull this so that you could see clearly, you could do it, I'm going to commit, I'm going to clean all my files, I'm going to pull a fresh copy.
That's the other thing you want to do, though. When you come in, see, I'm the most active person on Git because I'm the administrator for like a team of 2, right? And then maybe the administrator and other people that don't commit. But I mean, as far as pushing to the remote repo, the origin, I'm the most active. Our other developers, VPN is actually down right now. So I mean, what I have on my C drive is more than likely what's there. I can always find that out on Git status, right? So it's going to tell me yours is behind by 1 or 2 commits or whatever. Somebody's actually been committing overnight, maybe.
So the question is that core repo that you are usually the only one who's pushing to, right? What do you agree with?
The core repo?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
As like the origin, right? Origin or the remote, right? It's the system of record. Everybody, it's like a hologram. Subversion, you only get the most recent copy, but Git, it's a distributed version control system. So it is like a hologram in that if I just made this, we've got, what, 5 commits, but if all of you clone that, you have the entire history. And so as long as you guys are maybe like fetching, which means get new stuff, right? Maybe I haven't done anything, but I don't want to clone it. I want to fetch, which means refresh from Git, right? That's refresh from Git. That will delete stuff, unlike Eclipse, if it's not there. So fetching from Git will delete stuff if it's been deleted. So that's your refresh from Git. So really, when I come in, I should be fetching from Git first, right? And that's the thing. If something's conflict, it'll give you a prompt, and it'll say, please resolve this, right? So I would fetch from Git, and then I'm saved. I don't need to like commit a fetch from Git. And then,
so maybe a workflow would be if you're, let's say you got 3 of them. If you're the one, you're the only one who has rights, let's say, push.
right.
Your process is usually all your files, you pull from Salesforce, push to the market.
Right.
And you're kind of getting this fresh.
which one? That's the thing that you
Let's say we're all working.
same like sandbox, right? One sandbox. Okay, got it.
Because of that, in fact, it does the automatic needs.
Yeah. So if you've got, let's say, 3 developers, let's say 2 code monkeys, and then 1 almost like release manager, Git admin kind of person, right? What you would do is people aren't able to make changes to Salesforce on the local computer, right? So all that's going to be up to date no matter what in Salesforce. Maybe you've overwritten stuff though, right? Because that's possible. When I save an Eclipse, if he just made an update to testutils.cls
Right.
and he saves it, maybe he commits that to his local C drive. So that'll be stored there in his Git hologram, right, before it gets pushed to the server. If you make a change, like let's say he added a method to testutils, get test leads, something, right, that wasn't there. And let's say you take the one that didn't have that get test leads method and you modify the get test accounts method to make it more robust because there's a new required field or something, right? And you save testutils. In Salesforce, your copy is going to override it. It's not going to complain at all.
Right.
Especially if something actually happened. Right? Something actually happened, it'll just save over. So how do you resolve that? Through the commits. And so, I'm trying to think of a way we can actually do this. We only have 6 seconds though. Let me do it here. So I'm going to do this. Let's turn off the screen because I think some of this we can get. Hold on, I'm trying to think of how that's going to affect my screencasting. I still want to catch camera that I'm recording. Just see how that's looking. Okay, let me do this, and I'll actually show you on a whiteboard. I would love to do this in code, and actually have 2 people making changes to the same file. Then you get to see conflict. But in much of that on too. Let's do this. What's this called in your org? Data factory, something, right? Comments, CLS common dot CLS. So let's say this file right now is, public class, blah blah blah, as it says, right? So I'm just gonna have the method name, right? Let's say returns account. Account. Get test accounts. Right. Let's say that's parameters. Right now, I'm not going to care about that. Return. Account. Oh no. Almost. I don't like list. It's the wrong word. Okay. So let's say both of you have this copy of the file, right? That's in Salesforce Sandbox. That's in Git repo, right? That's how you start there. So now you come in first, and you want to add a method. So you're green. You're going to add a method with the get test leads, right? Number 1, it's smart enough. That's the main thing about Git. You command line git push, and your one commit conflicts with his commit already. There's going to be a discrepancy to resolve. So perfect. What it will do is it will fetch everything that does not conflict. And then you'll have, what I've seen, you'll have a big, large file with 2 versions of the file inside of one. That's what I've seen. I wish you could go with that, but so it'll be like, whoa, okay, it's a lot of stuff. I've got both versions of the file like in one file, and then it's your. That's the thing. It's the release manager or that admin's job to go. All right, here's what it should be. So there's got to be a subjective part of that.
So the workflow, it sounds like in this case, the workflow has to be pushing Eclipse to offline mode, and if you want to quote unquote make a change to the board itself, you first need to commit and push to your origin to see if there's any conflict. And if you can cleanly commit to the origin and there's no conflict, then no, you can save the Salesforce time.
Yes. But that's why it's nice to have everybody in the room go, right? If you don't have that yet, that's what's nice about it. Okay, I've saved the Salesforce in my sandbox that I can guarantee, code control over. And it's committed there or not, right? I mean, it's personal sandbox over there. So then, like I say, I pushed the change set. How are you going to know? Right? That would be the point where maybe you want to get those files against instances, right? Because if there's deletions of these lines for that new get leads thing, that's not part of your file. You'll be able to see like, hey, wait a minute, that get leads method isn't there. There's some level of just knowledge you're going to have that should be there, right? There's no, unless you comment, it's not going to be anywhere. Oh wait, that should get deleted, right? As opposed to that's a conflict that should be saved. We should just add 2 lines, right? So there is subjective stuff that's going to go in there. But let's say he checks this in, and now you have just that, and you want to, add a line above here that says that actually does something, right? That actually like does this, and it says like account list, equals something, right? So a test method or select query or whatever, and then return ACCS. Turning Eclipse off the offline mode is nice. When I was on one repo, many branches, on a release night, I actually had an all caps tweet that Dave Carroll was like, all caps, really? It's, yeah, because I was going review and production. I overwrote a large portion of the review sandbox with what was in production. So thank God there was another sandbox before that where we have a chain of command that I was able to push from that lower sandbox into our full copy. Because like five changes, and it wasn't everything because it was like, I effectively pulled the plug, out of that. But that's the thing; it was just this little workbench loading, right? And that was it copying over everything. So that's why I wouldn't recommend doing that with instance. But then, right, if you guys are on the one sandbox and you make this change, you're not able to save that file unless, right? You can't save that file locally unless you're on the offline mode or something.
It feels like to me that I kind of around people like that the only way really you can get effectively if you're in a multi-developer environment is to have multiple sandboxes. Everybody's eventually either getting pulled or pushing to a central repo.
Right.
And then got a release manager.
You got Jenkins, exactly.
Using it. But if they
have a Salesforce user that allows them access to save code to that, it really doesn't matter anyway, and it's more of a trust thing, right?
Well, the point is you have to do some structure there.
Control, yeah. So optimally, right, what you want is you have that, your production order, right? And then you have maybe your full copy, and And then let's say that's it. So it's been nice to have, because full copy shouldn't be anything except this is ready, and it's going to stay in there for a week or people to test, and then it should almost exactly be it should really only have like the next release that's different, right? But let's say okay, that's it, and then you've got you know, personal sandboxes, right? So once things converge here, yeah, people should only have access to their personal sandboxes and not have API access to those, right? They shouldn't be sysadmins.
They should be committing for field or asking for requests from that repo, the RM goes and uses it.
Now, what I think that's the thing is, what happens when a sales manager creates a new report or email template? You're always going to have to incorporate changes that don't come up the Git path to be refreshed or updated daily.
Right, I wonder if in that case you could almost have like a different branch of that origin repo, like call it production branch, and then you could pull metadata from prod, RM, pull metadata from prod, and then merge into that repo. And so it's like a gamma refresh of full copy.
Right, but that's,
if you need one,
that's the thing that, well, you know what? You can use AMP for that.
Right.
Yeah. Mine's the data, right? But you can write stuff for that. Unless you have created the access. Right. So it's only the So it's really only what's different. But that's where you want to see a whole bunch of personal sandboxes, right? Or just developer sandboxes, where that you're not worried about overriding your stuff here. That's kind of their problem, right? The problem you want to worry about is here. So that's the thing. What you would do is you'd need something where they submit the code. They got to save it here.
Right.
Otherwise, you got to have some big thing to like metadata API validate just to see if it's going to work, right? Nice to save it in Salesforce at some point. And then they would push it here. It would be saved here, but then you get the conflict right there.
Right.
And then if this is resolved and it's fine, that's what we put it in. That means that they can't, unless if they have access to that.
It's too tempting to just fix something.
It's like having a create new opportunity in the quick create, but you need a contact role required. And so why have that there, right? Well, because of the opportunity tags there. It's there. That's the thing is, if you really want to control that flow, number one, you can only control it so much if you are tracking all metadata because of stuff like dashboards and email templates, new fields.
It's an interesting problem. I think this topic is timely. I think, as complexity of development is increasing in areas towards, we need something like this. And I think that you mentioned some articles that we're talking about the integration and development.
That's something I'd like to cover. So, I didn't really do a whole bunch here, so I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave this here because the Jenkins. Looking at Jenkins, but so let's just do real quick. Give me some bullet points of what continuous integration, either like what you think it is, what it means to you, what you want it to do for you. But if I was on CI, I would. Right. What does continuous integration involve? Automated testing. Okay. I forgot. We're going to give this out. But, let's care about that. Okay. How many tests can you run in Salesforce? What limits around running tests? So let's say, okay, in the CI environment, every time people would check in here, and it doesn't matter unless it's here, because every time, let's say people check in a new backlog item or something into our Git repo and it validates and they don't have access to here, and Jenkins builds it. So it compiles and builds fine. Right. What happens if I have developers
many pages they have a process I might done.
Or it's 500 for Salesforce limits. Cheat sheet. And can I Ctrl+S? Test. Test. The greater of 500 test classes. So your test class can have 18 test methods, right? But so test classes, you can run the greater in a 24-hour period of 500 or 10 times the number of test classes in your org. So a good reason to make like a test class for everything, right? But that's the thing is, you can only run 500 test classes and now they can be separate months. Okay. So it doesn't make sense to run all tests every commit, right? Just because of the parking meter. So what do you really want out of the automated testing?
Oh, it's just, that's over.
You want to know when things fail, right?
Outside of Salesforce, I'm ready to keep that.
How often would you want to do that then?
Well,
At least once every day, right?
so typically in a normal CI environment, you're going to run at least some kind of unit test. Just so you can make sure you didn't introduce a bug. Basic impression.
There are things with the tooling API that allow you to see if there's even any coverage, right? Because if I'm writing one, like if I'm writing a trigger, it's different. But if I'm writing a page in the class, or like a controller, I should have one test class for that controller, right? And so there are some things in the tooling API where maybe you could limit the scope of what you test instead of run all. It'd be nice to run all tests though. It's the whole point of regression testing and making sure you don't break stuff. So let's say that was fine. What else? So continuous integration includes automated testing, build, someone build, automated builds.
Yeah, automated builds.
So this is something that is nice to use, maybe Jenkins and Ant. I would get, if you've never really had Ant with Salesforce, I would start, if you're in an enterprise situation, to try to copy a sandbox to another sandbox. Maybe make a build sandbox so that you can get the whole, okay, I've got a contractor somewhere out there. I want to make a sandbox for them so that they only have access to that sandbox. But I don't want to copy from prod. I want to copy from maybe dev2 or something. That's what you can use Ant for. And it can be manual. And that's how you get your elbows with the build.xml and the build.properties, right? So this is generally used a lot for locally compilable software too, right? I can crank out a copy of production into a sandbox, right? And so stuff like Ant will allow me to maybe copy sandboxes into other sandboxes. And if you're already going to do all that, you might as well write some metadata or some data. You can use data loader. You can use Ant, which is scriptable, and data loader, which is scriptable, right?
Another thing people use like syntax, like style validation. So if you're
have you ever seen the JavaScript of somebody that wants to hide their JavaScript? It looks like this, right?
Right.
Exactly. You can, and that's the thing, you need to write your own client thing for that. But you can save server code. I think it's server code. So, you know, I sort of want to do that. Then you have to retranslate it into like how you going to map A to, you know, num records lost, you know.
Right.
So exactly.
But you could identify resources. Like you have developers in their environments that have resources like JavaScript files or something. Because you could have
Right. So this is something I've tried to tackle. I was tired of pushing on a Saturday and having a test fail that had been failing since Tuesday. Because I went in and saw, wait, what's causing that to fail? Oh, a report folder got deleted because somebody's cleaning up the report folders, which is perfectly fair because it's not being used anymore. But a piece of code actually refers to that folder. Or it's selecting a report, whatever the case, a queue that gets deleted, whatever, right? Maybe once a day is good enough. You can do that through a C# or a Java, tie into the metadata API or Apex API. Or you can do a scheduled job for that. You can make a scheduled job in Salesforce. And here's what I've done. I do a scheduled job at 1 or 2 a.m., right? And then that scheduled job is going to, for each Apex class in select ID from all, insert Apex test queue items. And then an hour later, you come and check all Apex test results for that day. And where there's failures, you can build out a little table of the stack trace and everything for each method that failed. So you can get that. And when people come in at 7 o'clock in the morning, if they don't have an email with failures, there were no failures today. Something that's not production, those emails won't get sent out unless you trigger your Salesforce to do it. But you can configure that, or you can have it pull into Salesforce and do that instead of have a Salesforce scheduled job. Automated builds, that's really only going to come into play if you do this, that people can commit anyway. It kind of loses that, right? Because there's just much less control and over the Salesforce flow unless you have like a big client app written. And then this, if you had enough regex or whatnot, you could make, that's the thing, you actually need to go in and change code. So if you wrote it from outside of Salesforce that called in, you could do that scheduled on the morning too.
No, when I was like,
There's no triggers on classes.
Some kind of CI environment, you could actually just be looking at repo. You could put plugins to that CI platform, get Jenkins or whatever, and have it look at your source before you begin with it. It can actually modify.
Nice, yeah.
Things that they've done.
And that's the thing, it's all so many client things, yeah. It's not going to be on Salesforce's server because I just don't think there's.
No. You're thinking of it all outside of Salesforce.
Exactly.
The other thing Salesforce you actually want to push metadata, deploy metadata to whichever target to get the product.
Right. Yeah. So, safe harbor statement. One of the at the Meet the Developers meeting, which is kind of one of the only ones that's not broadcast. They did. I got the last question, and I went version control. Right? When are we going to see that? Even if it's so, let's say it's in the workbench.
Right.
I want to be able to like have an inbound change set and diff with current. Right? I would like rewrite change sets if they were at all accessible to the API. They're totally not, and there's so much view state or whatever you have to capture. When I've tried to like just make something to create a change set, forget components, and it just takes so much browser view state. It's totally browser locked, which, yeah, you can do that, but you just wait a year, right? Save your time. Do something else, wait a year, they'll have it. But they're, not that they're going to open up change sets to API recently or anytime soon, but version control is going to come. What would that look like, right? GitHub API. It's not going to save files on your computer. Right? I mean, you're going to have to like set an endpoint eventually, right? So if it's going to be a C drive Git instance, I don't think that's going to happen. It's probably going to happen either with GitHub or some endpoint that you can add, kind of like a remote site setting, so that you can commit to that local repo from Salesforce, maybe. But that's going to get started this year, hopefully. So within the next 2 years, I would hope that there's something available in Salesforce to have some sort of version control. Where that's going to be on the origin side, I don't know. But that's coming. It's probably going to happen through the workbench. The Eclipse IDE is still, going to be open sourced, but the tooling API doesn't have access to all metadata objects yet. right? I was trying to do, we've got backlog items in Salesforce S object, and we've got a child object components, for that, like change set based backlog item. I wanted to make something where I could go in and actually add components through the metadata, API. Tooling API doesn't cover sharing rules or a bunch of stuff. So that's still coming. But as soon as they open source that, you can clone it, and you can contribute to it. And in our next session, we'll cover pull requests. Okay. I'm going to lend this to you as soon as I get your email. I'll create a chat user for you. I'm going to wrap this up. Does anybody want a self-one? And I'm going to go and wrap this up. So thank you for coming.
All those are whoever wants them.
Yes, please. I think this is everybody's.
These are a very large survey that Lewis did with one universities.
Nice.
Which one? MIT. Thank you.
Oh.
Nice. And how people are using Salesforce.
Perfect. Excellent. So these are going to be up here. For anyone's interested, I want to thank our host and key partners. We get a lot more done when we're not at the bar. And that has more to do with the tables and Wi-Fi, perhaps. And go ahead, please, get more food and more drinks. And we'll take care of this right now. All right.